Hello, everyone. I'm Sara Pini, Deputy Head of the President Office at the European People's Party. And on behalf of the EPP, welcome to another episode of this special series of EPP Family Talks on the future of Europe. Today, we are very glad to welcome Siegfried Mureșan, member of the European Parliament and Vice Chairman of the EPP Group responsible for budgetary issues. Siegfried, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today.
It's good to be with you, Sarah, and with everyone following us. Thank you very much for the invitation. My pleasure.
As we all know, in a few days we will celebrate the Europe Day, which commemorates the famous Schuman Declaration that the French Foreign Minister Robert Schuman pronounced on 9 of May 1950, and which can be considered in some way the birth act, or maybe one of the birth acts of the could maybe the 9 of May 1921 become a sort of rebirth for our union after this pandemic that completely unraveled our lives and made it impossible to go back to normal, to the old.
Look, the 9th of May now is the day when we need to look forward. We are now seeing that the pandemic is slowly coming to an end. Of course, until the moment that the pandemic really ends, it's important that all of us will continue to observe and follow the rules. But we see that the vaccination is progressing relatively well. So now we can already think about the European Union after the pandemic. And it is clear that the world is changing, the world is evolving, and so it's normal that the European Union has to evolve as well. This is just a very natural process. Every one of us as individuals, we evolve, companies evolve in order to stay successful. Everything changes and evolves, so it's normal that the European Union shall evolve as well. So we shall take the time now in the upcoming months to reflect about what type of European Union we want in the future. And we have to reflect about this because we saw during the pandemic that people expect things from the European Union. This is a good sign. It shows that people trust that the European Union can provide solutions to the problems that they are facing. But the truth is also the following. In the last decades, there were some policy areas about which the member states, the governments of the member states said, we are going to deal with these at national level. Healthcare was one of them. Education was another of them. The curricula in education is not being decided in Brussels at European level. It's being decided in the capital cities or in some federal countries, even at regional level. And now during the pandemic, we saw that people expect Europe to do things, particularly in the area of health, but most of the prerogatives of the competencies to do things in the area of health were until now at national level. They were the responsibility of the government. So if people expect Europe to do something for them in the future, we also have to give to Europe the instruments to do those things. This is why I expect us in the upcoming months to think a lot about what instruments we have to give to the European Union to be able to solve more problems in the area of health as well, because we saw during the pandemic that people expect Europe to do more in this area.
And in order to answer this, to be able to answer citizen expectation, the website of the Conference on the Future of Europe offers the citizens the opportunity to share their ideas on the kind of Europe they want to live in. As a citizen yourself, so taking aside for a moment your different political views, what would your proposal be if you had to enter your proposal in this website?
So look, there will be indeed in the upcoming months the opportunity for all of us to speak up, because the decision makers in Brussels will listen and they will decide on the future policies based on what people are saying. This process of really asking people to speak up, to tell us what to do, it is, unique, and it is very open, it is very transparent, so everyone can register with the website created by the European Union about the future of Europe. and everyone can say what they expect the European Union to do in the future, how they want the Union to look like in the future. So I can only encourage every one of you to really go to the website and speak up, because it is your chance for your voice to be heard. What will I say? I will say the following. Europe should do more in the area of health in the future. But in order for Europe to be able to do more, it also needs to receive the instruments, the tools, and the main tool very often is the budget. You know, we can dream about a better education system with a more digital infrastructure, but if we do not invest into that area, we will not reach our objective. And the same is valid for health. So I want us to create an EU healthcare solidarity fund, a fund which has enough resources, enough money to be able to react in case of an emergency situation in the area of health. A healthcare fund which should allocate money in a very targeted way to modernize and expand hospitals where they are not able to cope with the healthcare needs of the people, and to build new hospitals where they are needed. Something which is European, a European healthcare fund, a European Solidarity Healthcare Fund, you know, where all of us, we express solidarity so that those people in need, where there are not enough hospitals, where they are not modern enough, where they are too small, those people can get improved medical system through support from the European Union.
And I think that this proved that once again the EU always proves stronger and bolder when it's confronted with a crisis. So besides what we have to do on the health sector, I think that we can say that something like Next Generation EU would have been simply unthinkable a couple of years ago, right? And you have participated since the beginning. You had a key role in the drafting of this plan for your role both in the group and in the parliament. How do you evaluate the final result?
Look, immediately after the pandemic started, we took many measures which helped countries overcome the pandemic. For example, we allocated 4 billion euros from the reserve of the European Union from 2020, 4 billion euros to be used in the fight against pandemic. We completely flexibilized the rules so that money could be used exactly where it was needed last year. In my home country, for example, the government immediately put forward a plan to allocate 350 million euros of EU funds to the payment of temporary unemployment. Those workers who were temporarily in unemployment because their companies were in lockdown and were shut down, they received unemployment benefits and the money was coming from the European Union. So the EU did a lot immediately, but soon we realized that the crisis is big and it will have severe economic consequences. So we have decided together, the governments of the 27 member states, the European Parliament and the European Commission, to do something unique, to create the biggest package of economic support that was ever created at European level. 750 billion euros to be put at the disposal of the 27 member states of the Union to help people, enterprises and regions overcome this pandemic and to make our economies stronger, more resilient, in order not to be hit by such a similar crisis in the future. Where are we now? We have done our job at European level to adopt the legislation. Now, each of the governments of member states has to say how they intend to spend this money. There are certain conditions and they need to respect those conditions. And they have to send in to the European Commission a so-called National Recovery and Resilience Plan, how they are going to spend the money and how they are going to make their countries stronger for the future. The European Commission will have to approve those plans, and we in the European Parliament also have a right of scrutiny. We will issue our opinions, and the European Commission is obliged to take the opinions of the European Parliament into account. So we are now in the phase in which governments are presenting their plans. The Commission and the Parliament will have a say. I expect all of this to be finished in 2 months' time from now on. and then money can start flowing, and the investments, the works can start, and people affected will be helped with the support from the European Union. It's the biggest package of economic support ever created by the European Union.
Yeah, and coming back to what you said about the role of the European Parliament, you and the group in general, and you in particular, you have always been adamant that the Parliament should play a crucial role in order to ensure a democratic control and to make sure that that this money is used well. What do you think you will focus? What are the elements that you would focus mainly on in this exercise? What you will be more careful about in scrutinizing the national plans?
Look, whenever money is being spent, the parliament needs to have a say. It's like this at national level, it's like this at European level, because it's public money, and so you need democratic legitimacy and control, and this can only take place in the European Parliament. So we will have a role. What will be important for the EPP group? Firstly, the more money you spend, the more control you need. Because the more money you spend, the more you have to make sure that money really reaches people in need, that it really reaches the beneficiaries for which it is intended. So we are going to scrutinize a lot, and we have implemented tough prerogatives on the transparency of beneficiaries of EU funds, on the control, on the European public prosecutor's capacity to look into how money is being spent and call those who do not spend money properly in front of the justice. For the European Anti-Fraud Office, OLAF, to also have a role in this. So we intend to make sure that money is well spent, firstly. Secondly, this is a recovery and resilience facility, so it shall make you more resilient, stronger ahead of the next crisis. In order to achieve this, countries also have to reform. So the EPP group will make sure that while money is being spent, countries also reform and become more modern. They become more modern and stronger in view of the next crisis. Then 6, we will make sure that money goes into the proper directions, because we have decided that money can go into 6 directions. Firstly, greening, to make our economies greener, to reduce pollution, to reduce CO2 emissions. Secondly, digital. These are to make our economies more digital. These are the future-oriented areas. So after the pandemic, as we spend money, we need to make sure that our economies become more modern. They do not just return to where they were before the pandemic. This is why a big part of the money should go into greening and digital. But this is not enough, because the 27 member states are diverse and their needs are very diverse as well. They have to put money into a third direction as well, which is competitiveness and economic cohesion. This means improve their infrastructure and support the private sector, support the SMEs affected. The fourth direction into which they should spend money is social and territorial cohesion. Social cohesion means money for the social categories primarily affected by the crisis. Very often it's children, it's women, and it's elderly people. For example, I expect countries to modernize care centers for elderly people. The fifth direction into which money should go is institutional resilience. So money for the public institutions about which we saw during the crisis that they couldn't cope. And here one example is hospitals. Money can go into the extension and modernization of existing hospitals, or construction of new hospitals. And number 6, money for education and youth, money to modernize the schools and to make sure that children and young people learn the right skills, for the economy of the future, which, as I said before, it will be a transformed, more digital economy. So we, as the European Parliament, will make sure that countries use the money where it is needed. They respect the European rules, they reform, they make themselves more resilient.
But of course, all this needs money, and one of the preconditions for the next generation EU to work is that all member states ratify the decision on EU own resources. And it could prove tricky in some countries, like thinking about Finland, for example, where the parliament recently ruled that this decision has to be taken at a 2/3 majority, not just a simple majority. Do you expect similar problems in other countries? And can you tell us and our viewers what is really at stake with this, and why it's not just a minor technical issue?
So what are we going to do? We are going to allocate 750 billion euros to help people, enterprises, and countries affected by the coronavirus. Where will this money come from? The European Commission will go and borrow money from the financial markets. In order for the European Commission to be able to go and borrow money, to be credible in the eyes of the financial markets, we need to create a so-called buffer in the budget of the European Union, a guarantee which the European Commission needs as a guarantee to go to the financial markets and receive the money. In order for that guarantee to be created, all of the 27 member states of the Union have to approve it. They have to ratify this decision at national level. In some countries, the decision of the government is enough. In some other countries, it has to go through parliament. In some of these countries, 50% majority is required, but in some other countries, a 2/3 majority is being required. So basically give the European Commission the permission to go and borrow the money on the markets. And every single of the 27 member states of the Union has to ratify this decision. Otherwise, the Commission cannot borrow the money and there will be no recovery fund and no one will be helped. This is why this is such an important decision. It is essential that every parliament ratifies this, because otherwise, the whole process will be blocked and we have to think about a plan B, and they do not want us to do that. This is why it's important that every country does this. And indeed, there are some countries which still have to go through this process. You mentioned Finland. Poland is another country. Both of these countries are countries where our EPP member parties are in opposition. So the governments have to do their homework. It is not, the responsibility of us as EPP member parties in opposition to, do what governments cannot do. In Finland, it's a socialist government. In the Czech Republic, in Poland, it's a conservative government. It is their responsibility to find the majority to get this done. This is why you're in government, to find the majority and to find solutions to the challenges that you're facing. If you cannot solve the problems of the country, then please leave government, go to opposition, and leave the place for some others who can govern better than what you can do. So it is the responsibility of the governments. If they have a plan, they should tell our member parties at national level who might be able to support. And our EPP member parties will always be pro-European parties and will want, such a package of European economic support to be adopted. But as I said, the obligation at national level lies with those who are in government, and the problems are not where the EPP is in government. There things are going very well, but the problems are where the socialists are in government, or where Renew is in government, or where the conservative parties are in government. They have problems in ratifying this, but I hope they will find solutions to ratify in all member states soon, so that the European Commission can borrow the money and the money can be put at the disposal of member states, so that people can be helped very soon.
Let's hope that they hear your call for responsibility, because of course now it's important to unblock as much money as soon as possible to tackle the severe economic and social damages that the pandemic left behind. But we also have to think ahead, to plan beyond the crisis. And we know that in some countries, I'm thinking about France and Italy in particular, but not just these countries, there are proposals or at least debates about, for example, reforming the Stability Pact or perpetuating this mechanism for EU debt mutualization. Do you think that it is time for EU rules on things like budget, deficit, public expenditure, to evolve, and if yes, in which direction?
Look, we could only do this big package of economic support, and we could only help people because some economies in the European Union were very strong and they were not indebted. If we are all calling for more debt, and if we are all indebting ourselves in good times, then we will be paralyzed in bad times. If we are to follow the calls of those who are responsible, who say, forget about any fiscal rule, let's make more debt because, debt makes them happy, then we will indebt ourselves. And whenever a first crisis hits, we will not be in a position to borrow money and to help those affected. This is why I say very clearly, in good economic times, we have to save, we have to be very cautious, we have to be prudent, so that we save and so that we can spend when there is a crisis. The decision to spend now during the crisis was the correct decision. I supported it from the beginning because people were affected and they needed support from the European Union. So it was correct that we did not look to the fiscal rules now during the crisis. We said, people are affected, restaurants are closed, people were risking to lose their jobs. We have to help enterprises and people. Forget about deficit rules. This was correct now, but we could only do it because we were not indebted. And as soon as the crisis is over, we have to return to the fiscal rules. We have to continue respecting the rules, because if we do not respect them, if we indebt ourselves too much, then when the next crisis will come, we will be, the debt on our shoulders will be so big that we will not be able to help anyone again during the next crisis. This is why, okay, to spending during the crisis, but afterwards we have to also save for a next crisis, which will come for sure. We do not know when, we do not know in what form, but it always comes in line.
Okay, now let's change topic, completely the topic, because you are also the chair of the delegation to the EU-Moldova Parliamentary Association Committee. And as a Romanian, also, I imagine you have particular bond, a particular connection with Moldova, a country that has, since the election of Sandu, finally a historical opportunity to break away from its past. What challenges is still President Sandu facing in this struggle to give a more prosperous and democratic and European future to her country, and will she succeed in the end?
The truth is the following. Moldova is a small country in the immediate eastern neighborhood of the European Union. And we can only live in safety and stability within the borders of the European Union if we are surrounded by countries which are safe and stable. This is why it is in the interest of all of us within the European Union to cooperate with the countries in our neighborhood and to help them. In the eastern neighborhood, Belarus, Ukraine, the Republic of Moldova, but also in the southern neighborhood in the Mediterranean area. This is the first element. The second element, after we understand that we have to help these countries, the second element is, what is the situation in these countries and in the Republic of Moldova? You are asking me specifically. In the Republic of Moldova, we had a very encouraging development. A pro-European, a candidate of rule of law who defends European values, an EPP candidate, won the presidential election at the end of last year against an incumbent pro-Russian, pro-Kremlin, socialist, backwards-oriented politician who kept the country isolated in poverty and was not modernizing the country. So the EPP candidate, a young pro-European woman, managed to win a presidential election. That was a very good development, not only for Moldova, but for the European Union as well, because we now have a partner in that country who says, I want to work closer with you. But a president alone cannot do everything by himself. This is why in the Republic of Moldova, the newly elected president called for early elections in order to have a new mandate for a parliament and in order to have a clear and transparent majority to support a government who implements reforms. Because in the presidential election, people came out and spoke very clearly. They said, we want reforms, we want modern schools, modern hospitals, public administration, we want the rule of law, we want European standards. And these can not be done by a president alone. They have to be implemented by a government which has a clear, transparent, stable majority in parliament. And President Maya Sandu called now early elections. They will take place in the month of July, and this is a very good development. I fully support it because the previous parliament, there was no clear, transparent majority, and it was controlled by the pro-Russian socialists. They attacked the judiciary, they attacked the constitutional court, and herewith the management of the pandemic was affected. The country could not concentrate on reforms. It could not concentrate on the management of the pandemic because its parliament was kept hostile by pro-Russian socialists, which were just interested in their own privileges. This is over now. The parliament is dissolved. People go to votes, and I hope that people will not forget which politicians were in favor of the European course and which politicians wanted to keep the country hostile, weak, controlled by politicians. I'm looking forward to an EPP majority in the Parliament of the Republic of Moldova, a pro-European government that is ready to work with us together with the new president of the country, Maya Sandu, because the more the government is ready to work with us, the more we can also do for the country and help the people in the Republic of Moldova or in any other neighboring country of the European Union, because helping them means helping ourselves. The more prosperous and stable our neighbors are, the better off we are as well within the borders of the 27 member states of the Union.
Thank you very much. I asked this question just to, as a reminder that the European project was conceived from the beginning for the entire Europe. So when you speak about the future of Europe, we have to speak also of the future of these countries. But just one last question, because in parallel with this series of interviews, we are running a poll on Instagram, asking our followers to define in just one word, one simple word, the Europe that they want for the future. So I would like to ask you to play along and propose your own word for the Europe of tomorrow. One word.
Look, I want a union which is courageous, which is brave, which is bold, a union which wants to solve the problems of the people, uses the instruments to solve the problems of the people, and where the union does not have enough instruments, it can reform, it can adapt to get more instruments and to solve the problems of the people. I want a union which is courageous also when EU values are attacked, a union which speaks up against those who attack European values, who attack what we stand for. I want a European Union where leadership is also courageous, where they focus on the big topics. Sometimes making decisions means compromising, reaching a compromise, reaching consensus, hearing the voice of the others. This all has to be done, but what we should not do is be complacent and stay, it's like a bicycle, when you stop, you fall. The same also for the European Union. We have to be courageous, solve the problems of the people, do what we can do, and recognize when we cannot do something, and train, get new instruments, new competencies to solve the problems of the people.
So courageous or bold.
Yes, that's my word. Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much, Siegfried, for your time. Thank you, of course, for the great work that you are doing for our political family in the group and in the parliament. It was, as usual, a pleasure to speak with you. And to all our viewers, thank you for tuning in to this episode of EPP Family Talks, and see you again tomorrow. Bye.
The pleasure was mine. Thank you. All the best.